Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Lloyd and I source cars for people on a professional basis. Although most of the cars I source are between £1,000 and £5,000, very often I've been asked to show something a little bit cheaper on the channel, and so I came up with No Budget Reviews, the series where we look at cars that you can buy in good condition with an MOT for under £1,000 and you can enjoy driving. We don't film this in an expensive manner, we don't use separate microphones, we don't use dual head tripods, we don't even use a DSLR, but we do have a lot of fun. You know, it's been 18 months since I drove a Rover 45 with a manual gearbox, so I thought I would rectify that situation. So I've come into Northamptonshire and visited Stan, who has supplied a couple of other very exciting cars for No Budget Reviews in the past, a Daewoo Nexia and a first generation Hyundai Elantra. And this is his daily transport. Like, he has a 45 which he uses all the time. But this is a really low mileage one. It's done about 30,000 miles and it's a late pre-facelift on a 53 plate. It's a 2003 1.4 Impression S3. Now, they weren't sort of badged in the catalogues. I mean, they weren't badged with trim levels at all for 45s, but you would have seen in the catalogue as an Impression S. It was such a popular special edition that they actually released it 3 times. The car's in really, really nice condition. There's hardly any marks on it at all. And actually, on camera, it looks even better than it does in real life. The paintwork really sort of pops, which is interesting. So we've got all, unfortunately, the sort of Project Drive type things going on here. We've got missing badge here on the rear wing. If we open the doors, we'll see that actually the door cards for one of these are in quite good condition, but they are sagging a little bit, which is just what they used to do. The door card should have wood on the top. That was deleted about 2002. And the late pre-facelift cars like this only had one style of kind of wood and one side of lower dash like this. Sort of beige there, fake wood up there, and down there. 5-speed manual in this one, and just a nice normal handbrake, although you can see where the electric window switches would be for the rest of the windows if this car had them, but of course it doesn't. This stereo, we've just been sort of wondering whether this is actually an original stereo for this car. It could actually well be, because by the end MG Rover were just throwing in whatever they could find. There wasn't much standardisation in that respect. Clock doesn't quite show all the time. That's quite normal for one of these. We do get the nice white dials and the little control here, which my car doesn't actually have, my 45 V6, because mine originally had a Becker sat-nav unit in it, and they didn't fit the stereo volume controls to those, only the cruise control, which would be here. But of course this is a much lower spec and you don't get cruise control on a 1.4. Door pockets actually they're long, but they're a little bit on the thin side, and there's the electric window switch for the driver, which is very eccentric. It takes people a while to get used to that sort of thing in these, but I must point out that the P10 Nissan Primeras are also like that for some really, really bizarre reason. Fog lights switch there, cruise control would be there if it had it, but it doesn't. Nice simple sort of dials. And we do have an opportunity to have fresh air ventilation there, even if you've got warm air coming out of the heater, which is good. Little coin tray is down here. That's where you can put the coin tray, and also shows you what fuse is. And there's that lovely old Honda mirror switch from 1980s that's still here. That would be the snow mode for the automatic gearbox if it had one, but of course it's a manual, so it's not there. Right, I think I'd better take a look at the boot. One of the things that tells me straight away that this car's in really good condition is the way that actually it's still got these plastic little tangs here for holding in the boot carpet. Most of them have fallen out because people don't bother putting that back in, but this boot carpet's nice and tight. We lift this up, we can see that sometimes these came with space, so sometimes they come with full-size spare wheel. I think that's just a space saver in there, but the 45 1.5 I had, which is a post-facelift car, so it had a different back end from this one. That actually had a full-size alloy spare in it, and it had the same alloy wheels as this does. The late pre-facelift and the sort of post-facelift mid-range cars had these alloy wheels on them, which I think are quite smart. Little boot light there. There's quite a lot of wheel arch intrusion for some reason, but the boot is much bigger than something like a Rover 25, which is big for its class, but this is even bigger, of course. Nice big sort of opening, although there's quite a high kind of lip, but that's it's quite normal for cars of this class. Got to make sure when you get one of these that you don't lock your keys in the boot. It's very easy to do that. You just close it and then your keys are in there. But of course we've left the windows open, and anyway, Mr. Golubiski, who owns this car's got the keys on him, so we're okay today. Parking sensors on here. It's actually a BMW system, these parking sensors, and they're not always the most reliable in the world. I know that from my car, but mine's done 80,000 miles. This has done about 30, so probably be okay for a while. One thing to check on these cars, particularly on the other side, but I'll show you on this side because I'm here, is the lower part of these wheel arches just down there and along the sill. Now this car's got sill covers on it like most of them do, so it's quite difficult to see, but if you see anything kind of down there in sort of holes, then you know you might have to take the sill covers off. And if you see some holes, they're not the most difficult thing to fix, but if they're pretty bad, you might as well just run away, because that's not the best thing really. This one though is fine. There's just not a mark on it anywhere, which is really good. A lot of people do prefer the pre-facelift cars like this with the separate headlamps. The lower grille on this is interesting. That looks a bit like the one out of the V6, but the V6 bumper actually has a little plinth where the number plate is, so you can tell this is a 4-cylinder one. And little fog lights down there as well, which is good. Right, I think I'm going to try to get in the back. Okay, we'll try this side. So seat set up for the average person. Funnily enough, this doesn't have seat map pockets at all. It's interesting for like a sort of mid-spec or special edition car, but it doesn't have them. There's not an awful lot of room in here. That's one of the main disadvantages of being based on an early 90s Civic, especially the EG Civic, and then the car that specifically shares doors and things with this is the Domani, which was like an alternative saloon version of that car to the standard one. But it's just not a massive amount of room in here. You can see very clearly where the electric window switches would be had this car been fitted with them, but it doesn't. It has the windy windows, which I don't think most of you are going to mind. We also don't have things like head restraints in the rear. We don't have a rear armrest because it's not as high as some of the ones like an IXL or something like that, or if it was a saloon, maybe Club or Connoisseur would have that sort of thing, but it hasn't got that. One good thing about not having a sunroof though is that it's actually less prone to rust. The ones with sunroofs are a bit prone like that. The trim's pretty good. It feels all good. It feels very good quality actually in this car. Right, let's take a look under the bonnet. I must say there's an awful lot more room under this bonnet than there is of my 45 V6. This is just for 1.4K series, in this case generating 103 horsepower. I've had this unit in so many of my own cars and also in so many cars on the channel as well. I think this is a receipt for the timing belt, which is fantastic because you do have to make sure on your K series that cam belt is done exactly when the manufacturer specifies it's done. Also, these cars have 15,000 mile or 1 year service intervals. I recommend probably changing the oil every 6 months on these. It's just something that you know, keeps it going. It's not hard to do on one of these or anything. Obviously, if you do have a problem with your head gasket, then the best replacement is a Victor Reinz or Lotus Elise specification head gasket. Both would fit this just fine. And just make sure you've got somebody who knows what they're doing refitting it. Yeah, the MLS ones don't tend to be as good actually. The original spec Victor Reinz or Lotus Elise ones are probably the best ones to fit. Most 45s had the K-series petrol engine apart from the V6. The others we don't talk about. But yeah, you can see how much room there is sort of down the back. It's really weird. This car was originally engineered for the Honda D series and B series engines, which actually sit on the other side of the engine bay. The gearbox on this is on the right. On the D series, the gearbox is on the left. The engine turns in a completely separate way, which yeah, is sort of interesting, really. Right, I think it's time to go out for a little spin. Lloyd Vehicle Consulting stickers, t-shirts and mugs are available by clicking the link to the Google form in the video description below. It's very strange, something that's just like my own car, but it's not. I mean, first, it's a manual. Secondly, it's only got 103 horsepower, not 150. But for a 1.4, this isn't too bad. If you think about the Ford Focus that was on sale at the same time, that only had about 80 horsepower from a 1.4 engine. This has 103. Other engines available were the 1.6 that has about 109 horsepower, and then a 1.8 118 horsepower. That one was the only one, incidentally, that was available with an automatic gearbox called the step speed or steptronic. If you can, I would probably stay away from that particular gearbox because it's known for being a little bit on the problematic side. There was, of course, also the 2-litre KV6. That is a very rare car now. There are just over 50 of those remaining in the entire country. It's mad on the road at the moment. There are also some diesels available, but as usual, due to controversial government legislation and all kinds of other reasons, we don't talk about diesels on this channel. What we do talk about is the fact that there's a lot of elements of kind of 1990s Honda in this chassis. Not the engine, of course, that's a British design, but the suspension, the brakes, they're all interchangeable with various Honda models. Principally the Civics, you could fit, you know, MG wheels to this. There was a sister car, the MG ZS, and this is really just actually a facelifted version of the earlier Rover 400, or the HHR version of that, because there was another version before that which we call the R8 version. Suspension then is double wishbones at the front and a sort of multi-link system at the back, which means these handle very, very well. They have nice hydraulic power steering. It's very easy to place them where you want to go. And the brakes in this aren't the strongest. They are actually just drums at the back of this, but they do feel okay. This car has, I think, the Ford IB5 gearbox in it. It's a mid-2003 or onwards. They changed from the earlier R65 unit that was in lots of other Rover and MG models up to the middle of 2003, because BMW owned the gearbox factory that made the R65 gearboxes, and they put the price up by so much that MG Rover found out it was cheaper to buy the Ford gearboxes for the cars between 1.4 and 1.6 litres than it was to keep buying the R65s, which were also in use at the time for BMW's own R50 Mini. I just love the sort of precise kind of steering that this has. The rear visibility is a bit of a pain, whether you've got the hatchback or the saloon. That can be a bit problematic in these cars. The seats are very good, whether you've got an early or a later car like this. The seats are actually quite good. I've done very long journeys in these before and not been very tired at all. It's yeah, the ride is quite good. If you want a firmer ride, you can always buy an MG ZS, but these cars are a lot cheaper than MG ZSs actually. Most 45s are still within no budget reviews money. If you can find a V600, even those are available for no budget reviews money. But if you want a very nice car like this, it's done about 30,000 miles, and it's in exceptional condition. You're going to be paying more towards the sort of £2,000 mark, particularly for the V6, if you can find one of those. So it might have about 50 less horsepower than mine, but I still really like this car. I think it's really great. And just going down this little corner like this, it's just such a nice thing to have steering like this, which you just don't find in a lot of modern cars, because they're all pretty much electric now, apart from like the MG3. But yes, I very much enjoyed having a go in this. I'm really grateful to Mr. Yonoviski for waiting a while for me to come down and have a go. And I hope you've enjoyed watching me have a go too. Let's talk Rover 45 trim level, shall we, viewers? When the car came out at the beginning of 2000, the trim levels for the hatchback like this were IE, IS, IL, IXL, IXS and IXS step. That was for the 1.8 with the automatic gearbox. The trim levels on the saloon were much simpler. They were classic, club and connoisseur, much simpler, and those started at 1.6 litres. There were, however, an enormous number of special editions, of which this is one. Although, if you have special editions that outnumber the normal models these days, you do wonder what MG Rover were playing at. But anyway, yes, the Advantage S, the Impression S, the Impression S2, the Impression S3. This is actually Impression S3, but it would have just been in the marketing of Impression S. The Olympic Impression, the Olympic Impression S, the Olympic, the Sprint S, and then the special editions right at the end were a GLI and GSI, which both have seats. I've driven the GSI actually on the channel. When the range was facelifted in the late spring of 2004, they introduced things like the Classic SE and the Club SE to sort of fill the range up and got rid of the sort of confusing and overlapping model names. But the question is, viewers, should you buy a Rover 45 with your hard-earned budget up to £1,000? Well, because I run a V6 version of that car myself, and I do that most days, I have a lot of experience of running them. You've got to make sure that you don't lose the key fob, whether it's the square one we've got here, which is the Lucas remote key fob, which was used in cars up to about mid-2003, or the round petrol one. Particularly don't lose one of those, because if you do, you have problems. As I said before, these cars do rust. They do have problems with the head gaskets. They also have problems with things like the interior trim and the headlining. Headlining, this is fantastic actually. There's no drooping at all in these. But watch out for those. I think it says everything that Rick from Austin Allegro and Agatha, which is now called Agatha and Everything, or anything I should say, actually runs one of these on a daily basis too. If you can find a good one, then people absolutely love them and they want to keep them for a long time. The bad ones though, yeah, they're not really worth having yet. These aren't really at classic money quite yet, apart from certain V6s and cars in exceptional condition like this one. Anyway, thank you ever so much indeed for watching this episode of No Budget Reviews. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment below, and we shall see you again soon for more inexpensive motoring.